Right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our isolved Inspire Ask Us Anything. This is our Women in Leadership panel. We're so excited to have you all join today. We're going to have Leslie Lyons, who is our Director of Network Marketing at isolved, moderating today, and she'll introduce you to all of our wonderful panelists. And yeah, we look forward to our great presentation. So I'll pass it over to Leslie.
Thank you so much, Christina. And yes, thank you so much for joining us today for what I am is so excited about this Women in Leadership panel. And I am just absolutely honored and humbled to have three fabulous leaders that I've had an opportunity to work with over my last 3 years of being with isolved. And I think you're in for a real treat. So I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves, and I will kick it off to Kathy if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go with Lori and then Teresa.
Sure. My name's Kathy Klenner. I'm the president of Payroll Network, and we've recently rebranded to P&I HCM. So you might see us in both aspects, but I've been in the business for 23 years. I started April 1st on April Fool's Day in 2000, so it's an easy day to remember. And I'm looking forward to sharing my story with all of you.
Great, thanks, Kathy.
Awesome. I'm up. I'm Lori Winters, founder, CEO of Thread. We were Choice Payroll long ago, so some people may know of the company as Choice Payroll. We rebranded in 2013. It's been a while. Started the business 20 years ago, and it's been a fun ride. And so very excited to share, my story with you guys too.
Great. Thanks so much, Lori. And Teresa, last but not least.
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Teresa Kachubik, and like my counterparts, 20 years seems to be one of those numbers. Now, I will say I actually higher level is also an employment service, which we started in 1995. In August is our birth month. So we're doing a whole month of celebration here. We added, at that time, payroll services in 2001. So we're, 22 years in. I've had the pleasure of using 3 other softwares before we came to landed at isolved and don't see, well, we're going nowhere. At least not under my watch. We've made 8 purchases of other payroll software over the years. We just actually completed one August 1st. So we're in the middle of all of that. And that was on another software. So we're looking at migration. I'm sure that's a lot of fun for any of you who have done it. And we have 10 locations, and those locations also support our employment service throughout the Midwest. So I look forward to networking with all of you guys and just hearing everybody's stories. So.
Great. Thank you all so much. And again, we have a few questions lined up for everybody, but please feel free to throw your questions in the Q&A. And also, share your ideas and thoughts in the chat, because I think when we do sessions like this, one of the greatest opportunities is what we see shared from each other in the chat. It's always fun to kind of watch that flow. So I'm going to kick it off with you, Kathy. And you already kind of told us a little bit about your background, but I'm just curious how you got your start, and then kind of where you thought you'd be when you first started.
Well, the answer of where I thought I would be is nowhere close to where I am. I graduated college intending to apply for law school to be a child advocate attorney. And I did an internship that summer at a lockdown facility for children, because those are the children that I really wanted to help. 2 months into that internship, every evening I was leaving crying, going home, because it was just so emotionally draining to work with children. And I said, I can't do this right now. I need a break. My sister-in-law worked for ADP and said, why don't you come here and open some mail for us? And I said, I'm in. I got a $20,000 raise, and started opening mail. And I did not, this was a summer job that I took. And actually I was adjudicating claims for FSA at the time. And I said, this is a cake job that I don't want any responsibility. I don't want to think about anything. I can do this and do it by myself. And I said, I'm just going to take the summer to think about really what I wanted to do. And, of course, I was always going to go to law school. So, I just figured I was buying my time till that. And I got an opportunity. They were moving the FSA Cobra division to Atlanta. And they said, do you want to move with us and help, start up and, kind of not at the time, but kind of be a part of this startup division down in national accounts. And I was like, sure. I don't have any responsibilities. I'm fresh out of college. I'm living at home with my folks. And there was a few of us that moved down there, and it was the time of my life. I had the most fun. And Lori can tell you, if you've never been to Atlanta, you need to go because it is a great town to just have a good time in. And that's what we did. We built that division. We started, I think there was 6 of us. We hired 200 people. Obviously, FSA, dependent care, Cobra are very services that are needed. So those things really took off. And about a few years after that, I got a little homesick, decided to move back. So up until there, I was really in kind of benefit services. So I hadn't touched payroll yet, got an opportunity to move back home with the same company in a different position, and just went from kind of a manager into a director level position. So kind of steady took on some more and took over a payroll team. I didn't know payroll. Like many of us that start out, it's like, who trains to be a payroll person? And so now I'm managing a team of people who were super smart, who helped me along as the leader of the team to understand what payroll was, understand taxes, just think about when you're early on in your career, kind of learning what that means. And I was surrounded by a bunch of great people, and just like we are all surrounded, we all have different experiences, and being able to leverage all of those things. And then eventually I took over another team in benefit services, came back to implementation for payroll, and then a service team as well, and worked in a group or a pod of people that both implemented and serviced clients. So I just feel like, and I loved my career there. And a lot of you guys may know Joe Young, who works with me today, called me and was like, I need you. And I was like, who are you? This guy calling me, right? Gentleman. And I was like, well, I'm not really interested in moving, right? I'm not going to move my career. I'm with a Fortune 500 company, and you're who? I've never even heard of you before. I have, all these great things. And he convinced me. Joe is a salesperson at heart. And I moved over to Payroll Network. And it really, coming from a big company that really is investor focused to a company that really is client focused. And I hear people say that, but I didn't really understand what that meant. And my personal philosophy, my mission is that you take care of your people, and everything else will work out. Your clients will be happy. You'll get more sales. You'll have the references. You'll have the retention if you take care of your people first. And that was my mission. And that aligned with what Charlie and Joe and the people that came before me built here. And so as I worked with George at the time, who was our CFO, it really just, we all aligned. And so as we started to work through, and we since I've been here, we've doubled our staff, and we have become an organization that from the beginning feels like Um, that's right, Mary. That feels like people first, everything else falls into place. And our tagline is full potential. And that's not only for your employees, that's for your clients, that's for your sales team, that's for everything, is that you invest there and everything else will fall in place. And so as George and Charlie, who are our founders, kind of continued this 25-year tradition, because we just celebrated our 25th year in business, and we are a complete remote organization. So we brought everybody on site, and it's been nice. So the last 2 years, as president, I get to, hold the flag of we've grown the most we've ever grown. We have seen the best sales numbers we've ever had. We've had the best retention, all of these wonderful stats. And at the helm of our organization is myself, woman, Kathy, Kelly, our CFO, Mary, our CRO, all women. So, when we think about what that means, and while we had a wonderful, first, 22 years, it's kind of fun to see what that means as we continue to move forward. And now we're on a trajectory to grow more year over year than we ever have, in a way that still holds true to people first, take care of your people and everything else, even in a high growth organization, because sometimes those two things don't meet up. And that's what we're really focused on.
Wow, thank you, Kathy. A couple of tidbits that I took away from that. Well, Atlanta is really fun. I live in Atlanta along with
okay.
Lori. So yes, I agree with that. But we don't need more people here. So come visit. That's great. But the other thing is, I actually thought I wanted to be a lawyer at one point too. So isn't it interesting how you can think you know what you want to do, and life just takes you down a completely different road, and look where you ended up, and I'd love to also hear from both Teresa and Lori. So Teresa, can you give us a little bit about your background?
You sure can. I sure can. So I originally started with McDonald's restaurants, spent 10 years there. I have the great privilege of attending Hamburger University, and thought I could do this. And then I started, I got married, had a couple kids, and boy, 365 days, 24 hours a day isn't near as pretty. So I decided that I was going to go back to school. So I went back to school, became a CPA because I love numbers, right? Sure, why not? Graduate, but I'm a fast food girl at heart. So I go and I start auditing for a CPA firm, and I thought I was going to poke my eyeballs out, to put it nicely. Then I moved forward. I started doing consulting before consulting was cool. That wasn't really a thing back in 1993, 94. And I really enjoyed helping others, just troubleshooting, learning those things. So as I'm going forward, I actually went to work for a employment service, or a PEO. So I don't know if there's any PEO people on the phone, but I worked for someone who thought they were a PEO, but they didn't understand that all the money in their bank account was not theirs. So they thought they would do a lot of crazy things with the IRS and their work comp money. So I helped them get on some payment plans and did some things like that. And she lasted about a year on that, and then said, oh, never mind, you're fired. And I'm going to go back to my bad way. So I actually started my employment service in 1995. I jokingly call it, I was seriously a credit card and a prayer. I was a single mother with 2 kids in Southern Illinois. I just posted this actually on LinkedIn, and I said, I used to drive around on Fridays. So this is before, I'm sure there's a lot of young people on this phone that are not even understand what I'm talking about. You had to deposit your checks before 2 p.m. or you did not get credit for the deposit on that day. So I would drive around and deliver the paychecks and run to the bank, and then they would write it in my book. right? The little book and everything. So that's how long I've been in business. About 5 years after I started that company, it was very seasonal. I thought, let's add payroll. I started, like I said, I've had 3 different payroll softwares. We still are migrating off of one of them. And I've made 8 purchases over the years also, just various companies that I've worked with, friends I've had, just really a lot more mergers lately. We're not even merger, we purchase, but we make sure we keep, to Kathy's point, those great team members because they're trained and we need them, right? We all need them. So we've done that. My employment company is actually our bigger company. It is a $50 million company. And then, we're proud to say that we have thousands of customers all over the US for the payroll side. And as we've done that, we've had to just really look at how do we grow? How do we make that stuff happen? And I know we've got some other questions on guys, and I laugh, Kathy, because you talk about, the men that were in your organization. We have 3 out of 75. Now, part of these people are on the employment service side, so I have recruiters, but I have a lot of crossover of responsibilities. And I used to joke, and I can say this because it's only women on the phone right now, so I don't want to insult anybody. But years ago, when I very first started, people would go, "Where are all the guys?" Because there was no women-owned business. What is that? And I would say, well, they clean for me after hours. That was always my big joke. And, when I would be selling to people. So that always, was a big home run with people, right? Oh, they clean the office afterwards. So, but I do have to, and I know we're going to talk about mentorship and some of that, but one of the things that always hit me was people would say, as we've got, as we've grown and I go into bigger markets, we're really big in the St. Louis area, and they'll say, who was your mentor? Now, mind you, I started in Johnson City, Illinois. So when you all get a minute, Google that. And I jokingly say, it's at the 4-way stop across the street from the Dairy Queen. That's all true. So, and my sign used to sit up front where you used to change the letters. That was how we marketed the business. So, we've come a long way. But there was no mentors when I started. That was not a word anybody used, much less other women in business, all those things. So things like this are such a privilege to get to speak to you guys and really be able to share life experiences, because there weren't these things years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I'm also in 30 years of a career as well, and you're exactly right, Teresa. There really weren't as many of these opportunities. It wasn't a thing. And it's just so incredible to see that now we are making room and space for each other and building each other up and encouraging and providing that mentorship, which we will dive into a second, for those younger people who are coming up the ranks. But wow, what a story from McDonald's to a $50 million company. That's pretty darn impressive. So
Thank you.
Lori, I definitely want to hear your story as well. If you could share a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So I started a different path. I was an engineer by schooling, so I have an engineering background. I went into high tech. I was a network engineer for a while, then moved into, I kind of decided I like to talk in front of people, so I didn't want to stay behind the scenes, so I moved into high tech sales, sales management. But my first job in network engineering, I was on a team of 100 network engineers, and I was the only female. So I've been in kind of a different, history, which was male-dominated businesses, male-dominated school. 25% of Georgia Tech when I was there were women, 75% men. So I feel like I've had to learn how to really work with men very well in my past. And so I did that for a while, and I was traveling internationally, doing a lot of crazy stuff and being gone a lot. And I had my first 2 children. I have 3 daughters, now young adult females. And it was getting kind of crazy. So I decided I wanted to take a little bit of a step and build something on my own. I helped my brother start an outsourced accounting firm. I tried to leave the company I was working for and they didn't want me to go. So they were offering me a job share, which that many years ago was unique. But I decided I was going to make half the money and still work as much. So I decided to go help my brother start an outsourced accounting firm. And then I decided that I wanted to start a payroll company. I'm reading that people cannot hear me or see me. Is that a problem, Leslie?
No, we can hear you. We can't see you. So I just asked Christina to see if she could troubleshoot the video.
It's weird
piece
because
of
I
it, but
see
we can hear you.
myself.
Yeah.
I see
It's always
myself.
fun.
I see my camera is on. I was having a lot of problems getting on, so I apologize. I'll keep talking.
We can hear you for sure.
Okay. So, but yeah, I was, in the accounting firm that we started, we were asked to do payroll, like, all of us work with accounting firms. And my brother at the time didn't want to get into the payroll business. So I decided to go start a payroll company. I knew nothing about it. So I joined an organization, IPPA, 20 years ago, and I met a ton of mentors there. And they really helped me because I didn't know what ACH was. I didn't know direct deposit. I didn't know what anything was. So I didn't come from the payroll world. But that's how I got going. And so, 20 years later, still in it. It's been amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting that all three of you kind of had completely different career paths, which is not actually surprising to me at all because I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I majored in economics and then I started down general business and now I'm in marketing. So who knows? Sometimes it takes a little while for us to find our passion, but when we do, it's totally worth it. So I do want to move on to kind of talk a little bit about mentorship. So, we all mentioned the fact that it wasn't really necessarily in existence when we first started our careers. So, Lori, I'm going to go back to you and ask you about what you guys have in place at Thread in terms of trying to mentor other women in your organization or even outside of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Most of my mentors in the past were men, which is kind of opposite of what we're talking about. And it was just out of, that's what I had access to, because there are many more male leaders, as we know. I have a lot of theories and have done a good bit of research as to why that is. But here at Thread, it's really interesting. My senior leadership team is myself and several men. But my entire management team, which is the next layer of management, they're all women. And so we're really trying to develop more women leaders in this company. And so what we do here is I felt it very important that even though the management team doesn't report directly to me, I run a monthly managers meeting because I wanted to help mentor the women, because it's important to have women that are ready to step up. And I think a lot of times they are not as confident to, take a seat at the table. They feel, split between family and work, and we all do. There's always guilt on both sides. And so it was important to me to help develop our future female leaders in this business and try to give them a voice and give them much more confidence and help, mentor and develop them so that, we don't just have a senior leadership team of myself and men. No offense to the men on my team, because they're awesome. But I want future women leaders in this company. So I think, internally, that's what we do. If anybody ever wants to talk to me internally or externally about how I've tried to juggle 3 daughters and building a business, I always have my opinions and my advice, whether it's wanted or not, on how to do that. But externally, I have several women that I work with that are mentors of myself and that I help mentor. And I just think it's important that we as women support other women, because, looking in the past and, all the way from middle school on, women can sometimes be the worst enemies of other women. And so I think it's important that we support other women and do that actively and intentionally.
Yeah, I think all of us have daughters on the call, so we can certainly understand that females are not always sweet and nice to each other throughout the aging process. But I definitely want to talk about, that work-life balance when you are a working mother, or even if it's just in general work-life balance, even without kids. But kids definitely complicate that a little bit more, make it even more challenging. Kathy, how about within P&I? I still have to get used to saying P&I, but I'm trying, Mary. I really am trying. What do you guys have in place for your mentorship?
Yeah, so similar to Lori, I was having a monthly leadership meeting and they were both, it was a mixture of people in that. And it was really our frontline leaders getting ready to elevate and preparing them. And so I was having this monthly meeting that it wasn't structured very well, because it was like, okay, I have this need, and then I'm just going to do it, right? Because that's what we do. We just do it. And we have a VP of training, Amy Miller, and I talked with her about I really wanted this to be a program to allow people in different ways to have professional mentorships, because I think we need those, but we also need personal mentorships like what Lori was talking about, because guess what? We all have responsibilities outside of work, right? We all have responsibilities inside of work. And sometimes that doesn't always end at the end of the day, and we're taking work home, and what does that look like? And so I think it's important to have people to talk to at all those levels. So we instituted a leadership cohort. That's what we call it. And so it's actually an 18-month program. And it's really for people who are interested in leadership, or if maybe your manager sees something in you that maybe you don't see in yourself quite yet, because it is very easy when you're the president to talk in front of everyone, because everyone's going to listen, right? But when you're the CSR on the phone, you might have all the same information as I do, but without the title, you don't feel as strong. And so giving that voice to those people that are brilliant, that can bring you to another level, you as the owners, the president, as the founder, whoever that is. I think that that's important. And so that's what we focus on in this leadership cohort, along with you have to do a book report and then present it to the executive committee, to our senior leaders. And I think that allows you to have a voice in a very different way. And so those are some of the things that we're doing inside our company to kind of elevate our newer leaders, women specifically in our group.
Yeah, that all sounds great. And I think both you and Lori kind of touched on something when it comes to women in the workplace and outside of the workplace, quite frankly, is kind of sometimes we don't always have the self-confidence we need. Right. And so if you don't have that title and you don't have that confidence, it makes you way more concerned or nervous or challenged about taking that next level within your career. So I do think that that's always helpful to have role models. I have a wonderful one at isolved. You guys know Lena Tong. She's phenomenal, and I can rely on her for mentorship inside and outside of the workplace. So I do think it's really important. Teresa, how about you? I know you already said you have a very female-dominated workplace, and I think that you obviously are doing a lot to mentor those women.
So yeah, I mean, it's and a lot of single women at that. So it's kind of my passion to a little bit. We raised our minimum wage up, just starting for high school graduates, to 20 an hour a couple years ago, and have always just really looked at how do we keep them growing and learning, and do all of our raises. And really, we don't do cost of living, and I was a little off the subject, but we do it based on all the things that you can get within isolved, the payroll modules, timekeeping, all that. They get bonus, or not bonuses, but weekly increases in pay based on that effort, because I'm real big on hand up, not a handout. And if you're not putting in the effort, you're not getting a raise. It's pretty simple. So, but what does higher level do? So one of the things, we work hard at having a really work hard, play hard culture. But what does work hard look like? And part of that is we built a leadership program, kind of what Kathy was talking about, around 3 books written by Roger Connors, is the author of all 3. And it's about self-accountability, Oz principle, team accountability, which is how did that happen, and change the culture, change the game, which is about the company and the accountability within the company. And so we have that also. There's 2 sessions, a leadership 1.0 and a leadership 2.0. And people have to apply to that program and just to do exactly what Kathy was talking about, right? Just helping them understand that there's a lot of people that do not want to be the boss, but their opinion, their words, their language, everything they're saying is as valued as to back to presidents, owners, whoever. And frankly, to be real honest, I've reached the point as I'm looking at, and I call it succession planning. Everybody's they're like, "You're not dying, are you?" No, but I'm 58 years old and I'm not working forever. So how do we raise you up? Because you need to plan your succession. Who's under you? How are you growing them? What are you teaching them every single day? And it's super important to us to really, we want everyone to have a voice about, because to your point of people being remote, people not having the ability to sit in the room with people, and how do you make sure that everyone has that voice? And I think leadership training is one of those. And we bring in a leadership trainer quarterly right now. We were just doing it for the management team, but we did a survey last year at the end of the year and said, okay, what would you like to see as addition for to improve our culture? And that was one of them. So we have a company-wide leadership program that we do quarterly, and it is talking about exactly these things. How do you give people a voice? How do you teach them that just because you say, hey, dude, you're not doing that phone conversation was not okay, that it's not personal? Because everybody thinks, right, if you say something to somebody else, I'm not their boss, oh no, and how do you help them do that? And so that's really what we've worked really hard at, to help people just across the board, that your voices matter. So the other thing I want to chat about, which we didn't touch on, and it's just back to culture. One thing Higher Level has instituted, and I learned this from this guy. He was like the 75-year-old grandpa in this business, and one of his granddaughters worked for him and insisted upon a baby at work program. And he brought that in. And I thought, oh my gosh, if this guy can do it, what in the world? So Higher Level has a baby at work program. I'd love to share that with anybody who's interested. Basically, that people can bring at 6 weeks, most people, 6 to 8 weeks, they come back to work. They can either we do have offices out of, they can bring their child to the office up to about 4 or 5 months. Some people, it doesn't work at all, right? The kid is not having it. But we have had so many babies at work, they make it to like 4 or 5 months. We have a very, very open, right, with school not starting, daycare quitting, but sick kids, but not really sick kids. COVID taught us a lot. But we have a very open policy on bringing your kids. And not that you can sit at home. Your kid is not there all day. I don't want anybody to think that's what's happening. But truly, baby at work programs work. If anybody would love to hear more, I'd love to share that information, because it is a home run, especially for those of us that have a lot of, right, single, or not single, but women that are pregnant, that you would like to come back to work a little earlier. So
That is a huge benefit. Wow, I've never even heard of that before. I think that's phenomenal. So now everybody on this call is going to go back to their employer and say, "Hey, I want a baby at work
tell them to
program."
call me. I
I
will
mean,
assure
hey,
them.
employers have dogs. They let people bring their dogs, right? Why wouldn't you let them bring their babies? That's phenomenal. I love that. So gears a little bit and kind of weave into a kind of more personal mentorship. Teresa, I know you've mentioned your daughters. Lori, I know you have daughters. Kathy, do you have any daughters? No, just two sons. Okay, well, that's okay. So we'll start with Teresa on this. So, what career advice have you given them, or what guidance have you given them in terms of what they could do and pursue and all that good stuff for their career?
Well, it's funny. My daughter, if you met her, luckily she's a little younger version of me. But the crazy thing is my daughter is in healthcare, which I don't know how that happened. Some of that must have come from her father, because I am not a healthcare person. I mean, I can be pretty caring, but no thanks. So it was funny, I think what she has taken away from me over time is just go for it. She was in high school. She had a young lady that was a study abroad student in high school. I put her on an airplane at 17 years old and went to Italy for 3 weeks by herself at 17. So, she has always traveled. She's always just really done things to just keep going. And I think the thing for me is just encouraging them to blaze their trail and have a voice. When she was applying for a job, asking for the money, you hear that all the time, right? Why are there pay differentials? It's because the women they don't ask for the money, right? And I've seen a lot more of that. So I think that message is getting out there. I do have people that come back and say, I want a raise. And I'm thinking, well, we're going to talk about how you make more money. But I think that's the biggest thing for me, and just really always having a voice and standing up for yourself and just really not just sitting in the corner. That's not where she's at. And to be real honest, I take my son the same exact advice. So always be going for it.
Yeah, I literally just said to my daughter 2 days ago, you have to advocate for yourself. I am constantly saying that to her because it's not a skill we're born with. It's one that we have to learn. I think my son tends to probably have that more in his nature, but I say it to him just as I do my daughter. I just feel like I'm having to say it a little more often to her because she doesn't have that innate self-confidence that her brother does. Lori, I know. Yeah.
Make her practice
Yeah.
with you.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right.
This is as simple as she's babysitting, and they came back, 3 kids, and they said, we'll pay you 15 an hour. I go, oh, no, you need to go back and tell them what you're asking for. And it was a struggle for her, but she did it. And I see, look what happened. You asked, they said yes. You're not going to know unless you ask, right? So it's important to keep reinforcing that, even if it's a babysitting job, right? And hopefully that carries her forward into whatever career she ends up in. Laura, I know I had an opportunity to learn a little bit about your daughter, and she sounds like she's on an incredible pace as well. So what kind of advice have you given yours?
So I have 3 daughters, 21, 23, 26, and they have heard me talk about business and working and getting a seat at the table since they were old enough to hear me, I guess. But I really talked to them. Sheryl Sandberg wrote a good book. She was the former COO of Facebook, called Lean In. We talk about go for it. And so I love her. She also did a TED Talk, which is a very simplified version of it. But this is the way I've always talked to my daughters is, number 1, have the confidence to get a seat at the table and ask for it and go for it. Number 2, you need to have a partner that's a real partner. So if you decide to get married, I told my husband before we got married that I'm not going to do everything. I'm not that domesticated. And so I'm going to need him to step up. And I have a great partner. I mean, he's awesome. So have a partner that's a real partner. And, I just, the last thing is, in her third piece is don't leave before you leave. And I even see this with my daughters now as they worry about, they want to have children, but they want to have careers, and they're all very successful and smart women. But I tell them, don't worry about any of that until you're ready. So go for it, lean in, fight for what you want, be confident, learn how to work with men because you're going to. And unless you work for Teresa's company, but you're going to need to work with men well too. And, just go for it. If you are doing all the right things and making yourself, indispensable, people will notice that. And when you decide you want to have children, if you do, you're going to be valuable and you'll have a little more leeway to kind of do what you're going to need to do. So, you can have it all. You can't have it all perfectly at the same time. It's a great quote somebody else sent me recently, another woman who is incredible, but you can have it all, just maybe not all at the same time, but, go for it while you can. And then when you are ready to take a little bit of a step back or have a child, you're going to be invaluable at that point. You'll have a little more leeway. And that's kind of what I'd say to them. I also, they would tell you, I talk about this stuff all the time, but I practice interviewing them. I want to help them, when we talk about go ask for money, more money, a raise, we go through how to do that. And so, I guess I'm their mentor. I guess they're my mentees.
That's cool. I like that. That role playing is a great tip. I really think that's a phenomenal tip to offer. I'm going to shift a little bit off of our scheduled set of questions, guys, because we're breezing through this hour. I can't believe it. But I'm going to go next to talk about kind of the space that you're in. Obviously, within the isolved network, for those that on the call that don't know, we are basically, it's our reseller division. I get slapped on the wrist for calling it that, but that's the easiest way to describe it. And we have, over 200 network partners, and the majority of them are run by men right now. And so, yet this is, HR tends to be a very well represented female industry. And I'm just curious for each of you, and Kathy, I'm going to start with you, kind of what qualities or skills do you think kind of helped you reach that executive level or kind of move up through the ranks in what we've already talked about was, generally speaking, a male dominated industry?
I'll go back to what we were talking about earlier about mentorship. And while they're sitting at a table with a bunch of old white men was very intimidating. And I remember someone asking me to get them some water. And this was someone, a very high title, and I did. I went and got them water, and I sat there and I was like, I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. I remember sitting in this meeting like, I'm not gonna cry, right? And afterwards, I went up to him and I said, I found that very insulting. And the gentleman couldn't even understand what I was saying, like, because it was that old kind of, and I just remember how I felt in that moment. And then in my circle of people, both men and women, I had mentors through the years, and interesting talking to them about how that made me feel and how I might have done that differently in the moment, and kind of getting some of that advice. But honestly, having the opportunity to be able to say, I need you to stop oh, there's Lori. To stop attending meetings so I can be the voice. Because even though when I was promoted, like our owner would show up for a meeting and I would talk and everybody would listen, but people would look at Charlie afterwards. And I said, I need you to stop coming. I need you to stop being a part of the organization that you built so I can run it. And he was like, thank you. Like, cause he needed permission too, to know that if something, I am responsible. You put me in this position for a reason. And so I believe that I think the question really was, what are some of the qualities and skills? And it's not being afraid, right? It's the advice that all three of you women are giving to your daughters, right? It's the advice we need for ourselves too, is not to be afraid to say, Kathy, that didn't make sense that you chose to do this. Or Charlie, I'm not sure I would have made those same decisions with those same dollars because I think we'll get a better ROI over here. The owner of the company, that's how we have conversations, because that's how you make change. That's how you make a name for yourself. And I wasn't rude in any way, but to be able to prove that this investment might have been better over here is a way for people to say, wow, she really is thinking differently. And that's why I think as you mentor people in our positions, to be able to hear those ideas and be able to elevate them, to have the other senior leaders hear them, is really important. And honestly, I think it's a little bit of luck, right? Right time, right place. I'm not going to lie, right? I mean, it could have been someone else. But I'm super smart. I'm super driven. And if you ever worked with me, you know that, like, let's get on a project and we're gonna hammer this stuff out. And I think that's helpful, especially because there's a lot of people in this world, right? And I think being driven in a way that's collaborative is really important. And like Lori said, you have to work with the men too, right? I would love to be able to have a project team of all women. It doesn't work like that, right? Women and men, they're just different, and you've got to be able to work with everybody in the group. So I say it's the qualities that you bring, and also, honestly, a little bit of luck.
Yeah, and I think there is an element of luck involved, but I
Sure.
also, from hearing all three of your stories, you took opportunities when
Yes.
they were presented to you and you weren't afraid to take them, right? And so it's, my takeaways from what you said were confidence, being able to speak up and advocate, and taking chances when they're presented to you, right? I think I'll go next to Teresa because I've kind of lost where I left off. So Teresa, how about you? What advice or qualities do you think are important for women in those male-dominated industries?
Well, thank you for repeating the question, because I had reached one of my, I think I know what I want to say, but hopefully it's related. So two words come to mind when I heard Kathy just, dropping those fun words out there. One is doer, and we use that word at our workplace all the time, right? Are they a doer? And the other one is grit. And so, those of us that have been in workplaces for a long time and whatever, get a lot of awards. And I don't mean that like, oh, brag, because a lot of it, right? You just put yourself in, they recognize it. And the nice thing is once you've worked hard for a long time, they do start hopefully recognizing it. But the favorite one I got was from a fundraiser for a group that was for homeless pregnant teenage girls. And they were doing a fundraiser, and I was their first recipient of the Grit Award. Well, what was so fun to me about that is I was pregnant at 17 and had a baby. He just turned 40, just to throw that out there to everyone. So hopefully y'all go, well, you look really good for being that old. So, but truly, I think the thing for us, all of it is, how did I get through starting a business, seriously, single, 2 kids? I laughingly call it a credit card and a prayer. But you look back and it's true. And you think, I don't even remember how I did it. I just know I got up every day. I didn't look around and think somebody owes me something. I knew it was in my court, and I either went for it and worked hard and made, shit happen, or I was going to be left at the back of the line. And I think the thing for me is just saying to every team member we have, and it's funny because I told you we just transitioned some employees from the company I bought, and one quit day one. And she quit because I met with all of them. And she was offended because I told her this is the expectations, and she just didn't appreciate it. And I thought, sayonara, sister. I'm not looking for anyone that I owe anything to. And I don't want team members that think that. It is a matter of we're here to work together. So we look for, again, what do I tell people? Work hard. And it's in your court. And if you want to be successful at higher level, it is because you worked for it. Nobody's giving you anything. So I'm a little bit of
that.
Hard.
I like grit.
Maybe.
Yeah. No, grit and driven. I mean, yeah, you have to be, I think, to be successful. How about you, Lori? If you need to repeat the question, it's what qualities or advice do you have for women that are in kind of those male-dominated industries?
Well, I think you do, need to learn how to work well with men if it's a male dominated industry. And I came from that. So it's difficult. It's a challenge because you want to be taken serious. You want to be confident. You need to be able to, talk with them with confidence without coming across as, bitchy or whatever. It's always, but my oldest daughter is in a male dominated industry. She's in the financial industry. She works for a company where in her group, she is the only female. And it's a challenge because the men will get together and go do, it's the outside of work things that I think are more difficult. It's the guys getting together to do, the guys club things, the smoking cigars and playing golf. That is a little more difficult to tap into that. But I just think confidence, but not having a chip on your shoulder, I think is important. Is if you go in with a chip on your shoulder, I'm a female in a male dominated world, and I don't know if I'm going to be taken seriously, then you probably won't be. It's more about just being, confident in who you are and be okay with, you're a female and they may go play golf and smoke cigars, but you can still go and, do some other things with them outside of work with a group. So, if you are, if you have the skills and you go and take a seat, be willing to take a seat at the table, do great work, don't have a chip on your shoulder, and learn how to work well with men in that situation. I think the great thing is nowadays, I think the newer generation of men are very different. They're much more accepting of women, and they much more accepting of women in business and in leadership roles. And so I think over time it's going to take time, but I do think over time it's going to change due to that. The men that I know that are in the little bit younger generations are much more understanding and accepting of women in leadership.
I 100% agree with that. I think that's because so many more women are raising kids and working than when I was a kid, right? It was most moms were stay-at-home moms. Now that's just not as much of an option or really desired, I don't think. I think most young women want careers and are trying, and that's actually a great segue into what I definitely want to get to because we're really running up on it's close to the end of the time here, but something I really struggled with when I had young kids was that work-life balance. I never felt that I was giving 100% in any one area, and it was a constant battle for me because I hate to admit it, but a type A person. So I always wanted to be giving 100% to work, and then I always wanted to be giving 100% to my kids. If I was at one, I wasn't doing for the other. So I'm curious how you guys have, or if you have dealt with that, had that feeling, and how you were able to kind of work through that, if you have any thoughts and advice on that. And I'm going to start with you, Lori, on that, because I do know that you have 3 children.
Yeah, this one hits home hard. And I talked to other women who have the same challenge. We as women, will fight men and women on this because one of my best friends was a stay-at-home mom, and I have my 3 girls, and I remember her saying, like, how do you do this? Like, how do you work all day? How can you be a good mom? Like, she meant it as kind of a negative, right? She was kind of taking a little jab at me. How do you deal with that? Like, are you able to be a good mom and be, work as well? And so I think it's one of those things that I never called it work-life balance. I call it work-life integration. I would take some time. I'd go see my kids. I made sure that I'd made the time to be there for as many of their events as possible. And then I might work late at night, but I have a great husband who, of course, made it very possible because that was needed right out of the gate. I told him I wasn't having children unless he was going to step up to the plate, and he did. He's incredible. But, work-life integration, I think we need to support each other. You're never going to be able to feel like you're 100% on either. And that's okay. Sometimes you're going to be 110% at work and maybe a little bit less at home. And then other times you'll be 110% when the home needs you. And you're going to have to step back a little bit at work. That's what I've done. And it's not been easy.
No, I agree with you. And I think the sooner you can be comfortable with that I'm not going to always give 100%, the easier it becomes, right? It just took me a long time to get there.
One thing,
Kathy, how about,
I
yeah,
want
go ahead.
to
Yeah,
say
go ahead.
one more thing. So important, like in third grade, one of my oldest daughter will throw this at me from time to time. And she goes, remember that time in third grade, you were at the party, but you couldn't stay and make the blanket with me. And I had to make it with the teacher, and I felt real, and she goes, I felt really bad about that. And I feel bad about that to this day, but she really looks up to me now. And I think over time, kids look at you as a mom that also was in business or working, and they really respect it as they get older.
I could not agree with that more. Now that mine are grown, they've earned a new I've earned a new level of respect from them, which I love. Kathy,
Exactly.
how about you?
Well, I live it every day. My kids are 10 and 11, so fifth and sixth grade. Yeah, I think it's just a balancing act. I have to agree with Lori. I couldn't be as successful as I am without my husband. He picks up the slack. I mean, I could never be home at 2 o'clock or what. I don't even know what time our kids get out of school because that's just not, it's. And so like Lori, it was not, I'm an older mom, so it was not something in my plan. I was never going to have kids, but then you meet the right person and it's the right flavor and he's able to pick up the slack in a way that I would never be able to. Because I know that I always wanted to have a career. It wasn't like, I wasn't like a little kid who thought I was going to have kids and be a stay-at-home mom or something. That just wasn't in my and so I think that that's really important. But the reality is I just wake up every day and try to do the best I can. Sometimes I shit the bed at work. Sometimes I shit the bed at home. It just is what it is. And, I just try to be as positive as I can. And, my kids see that sometimes I fail at, oh, yeah, I'll be at this thing. And Lori, thank God I haven't had one where I missed a blanket making, but I'm sure it's going to happen. I almost missed the science fair and that was the end of but, I just try to do the best that I can. And as a working parent, I think, whether, it's just, you give up and you take some. So I think, and that's where the supporting each other really comes into play.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think keeping in the back of your mind the role model that you're being for your kids.
Yeah. Yep.
By working and juggling, I
Yep.
think that's priceless. So I would love to end on shit the bed, but I'm going to ask Teresa. I'm going to ask Teresa for her responses as we wrap up today.
Well, I can't say enough about pick a true partner. I picked the true partner on round 2. But back to, mine was, I forgot my daughter standing after school, and she would call from the office, I'm still here. And I'd send someone to go pick her up. So we've all done that. And I think the thing I would say is show yourself some grace. For goodness sakes, everybody, we are all human. This baloney on social media, this baloney on TikTok, all that. Put down your phones. Know your kids love you. And you know what? Back to me, advocate for back to being able to be a bit. Bring your kids to work with you if you need to. I'm telling you, hopefully those of you, I know you got a lot of work from home, but we have offices. We have kids there, I would say a 5-day work week. Not all day, but right after school, whatever. And the other thing is advocate for flexible. I want to go to the baseball game. I'm going to work 7 to 3 so I can pick up my kid and go to his baseball game. If you have an employer that's not doing that for you, call me. I'll call them. I mean, that's it. Just back to advocating. Sometimes you can do that. It's so easy. I mean, we just have people call, hey, I've got a game these days. I've got to go late. I've got to drop them off at school. We'll be in at 8:45. Who cares? I mean, those of us that are employers, I'm sure Kathy and Lori are like, sure, absolutely. We do this stuff all the time. But if your person is not, right, that man in charge is not doing that, advocate for yourself. And again, show yourself some grace.
I love that. I just think that we go from recognizing that sometimes we're going to shit the bed and we need to give ourselves the grace to allow ourselves to do that, There's
Yep.
no better advice that anyone could give. So I just want to say thank you to all three of you. I know we're going over time here, but it's totally been worth every minute of it. I have taken away a lot of nuggets here, so I'm sure the rest of the attendees have, and I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you to everybody who
Thank you.
attended, and we'll look forward to the next round. Thanks. Have
All
a
right.
great day, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You guys.
Bye-bye. Thanks.